Everyone for being here at the Script Innovators Panel Breakfast. It's great to see such a good turnout, and actually we were just commenting that there are so many new faces in the room compared to some of the events we've held in the past, so that's a really good start. Those of you that don't know me, my name's Kobe, and I'm managing the Sunshine Coast Innovation Program, otherwise known as Script. So my job is to connect people like yourselves with relevant people or programs or places on the coast that will help you to further your business. So if you haven't connected with Script yet, feel free to grab me at the end of today or jump onto Digital Sunshine Coast to receive updates about similar events like today. And another way that we help local businesses is through the delivery of innovative and entrepreneurial events like this one. So welcome to our Innovators Breakfast. Today you're going to hear from some hugely inspiring and successful business people, not only from the Sunshine Coast, but from across Australia and even reigning from the UK. So our panel today, we have Stephen Baxter, Ian Mason, Elaine Jobson, Shanna Bignell, Mike Black, and our MC for today is Cam Dunlop. So we've deliberately curated a very diverse panel to make sure that the different views and expertise you hear about today ranges from whether or not you're a startup founder, the owner of a small business, or an employee from even a large established organisation. This has been designed to be an interactive event, so in order for that to work, you guessed it, you need to interact. So don't be shy if you have questions. And we have set up a polling platform called Slido, where you'll have the opportunity to log on to that landing page, enter the Script code, and lodge any questions that you're burning to have the panel answer. So if you've arrived today with something in mind, make sure you lodge that and we'll try and get it answered for you. You'll also have the opportunity, I guess, to vote or bump up any other questions that you think are priority. To help frame the discussions, I'll just give a little bit more of a rundown about our panel guests so you can get thinking about what you might like to ask them. Steve, of course, is our well-known investor, tech founder, and our Shark Tank judge. At the age of 23, Steve put his life savings of $11,000 on the line to launch his first startup, the pioneering internet service provider SENet from the spare room of his home, and that was eventually acquired by Aussie Mail. In 2001, Steve teamed up with a schoolmate to launch his second startup, Hype Networks. That was listed on the ASX in 2005, and 8 years later it was sold to TPG for a modest $373 million. Steve's also spent some time working with Google in California, delivering a high-speed telecommunication systems project, and we're lucky to have him as our resident Queensland entrepreneur. We're also very grateful to have Ian Mason. Some of you might have met him yesterday as we toured the coast. He's the head of strategic development for Virgin Startup, which is Sir Richard Branson's not-for-profit company. Ian was appointed a leader of the UK delegation of the Y20 Summit, so he's very passionate about representing young views in the UK, and also does a lot of campaigning around education and improving people's levels of financial literacy. Hi, Ian. I'm just jumping around here a bit, didn't know what order they would sit in. But down here we have Elaine Jobson. She has more than 25 years of exec experience working for some of the world's largest fitness brands. So her roles have taken her all over the world. She's worked in Asia, Europe, South Africa, and now Australia. She's best known for teaming up with some of the well-known industry entrepreneurs, including, yet again, Sir Richard Branson, so you two will have to have a chat later. And also Brendan Levinson, the founder of Jets Fitness. Elaine previously won the Deloitte Best Company to Work For in South Africa, so she's very passionate about building successful companies through culture and also nurturing exceptional leaders. Then we have Shanna, the marketing associate at Typify. Shanna is a marketing and communications specialist supporting the growth of Typify. If you haven't heard it, It's a cutting-edge platform which provides customers with the ability to take one single source document and automatically render it into 30 different formats with 100% accuracy. Shanna has more than 15 years experience in marketing communications, particularly in not-for-profit and education sectors, if that's of interest to you. Then we have Mike Black in the middle. Hi, Mike. He is a successful creative technologist and a behind-the-scenes champion for several high-impact social and economic challenges. He does a lot of work with state and federal governments, major universities, as well as SMEs, and he's delivered a whole range of different interesting, cool projects, from self-driving cars through to autonomous care robots and Internet of Things literacy programs out in rural areas. He's the principal investor at Mike's Lab and a strong voice for digital literacy and the Maker movement. So you guys should probably have a chat, I think, about self-driving flying cars. And our MC for today is Cam, over in the corner. Cam's the co-founder of AppTeam, a boutique software development studio, and it offers a wide range of technology-related solutions. Cam is very passionate about client experience and sustainable innovation, which I'm sure you'll see coming through the conversation today. So the format is really a Q&A panel hosted by Cam, and then, towards the end we should have some more opportunities for you to network now that you've had some food and caffeine. And I'll just make a mention too, before I hand over, about Startup On-Ramp. Some of you might have seen some of the marketing lately. Sunshine Coast is about to launch Startup On-Ramp training. So it's a program founded by Colin Kinner down in University Labs, and we'll be rolling that out starting in September. If you're interested, it's basically aimed at new and aspiring founders to give them the guidance and skill set they need to launch a globally scalable startup. So if you're in that seat at the moment thinking you'd like a little bit more mentoring and a little bit more nurturing for your business idea, come and see me at the end, or else we have appointed Jackie Price as the key facilitator for that program. You can also find out more on Digital Sunshine Coast. Right, thanks everyone, and enjoy today. I'll hand over to Cam.
Cool. So guys, Cam, thanks for the intro and setting up the event. I think one of the key words was around about interaction. So on this white piece of paper here, I've got a list of questions that I sort of want to throw to the panel, but I think it'd be a win in my book if I could refer less to this and moderate the questions coming from the group. So you don't go to too many events where we actually encourage you to get on your phones during the event. But if you don't mind, jump on your phone, go and visit this website now if you can, because the questions that you guys want answered by the panel, we want them to sort of show up here where you can actually vote for the questions, so you can sort of upvote questions, and we'll actually get to those questions throughout the morning. So I think the key thing is once you get to that website, one of the first things you'll see is you have to enter in a code. If you can just enter in that code script, and that should link you into the portal. Look, it is sort of an innovation / technology / entrepreneurial type event. It wouldn't be that without some sort of technical glitch. But let's just keep our fingers crossed and hope that these questions do appear on the screen. Cool, so guys, I'm actually going to roam the floor this morning. I have the microphone with me. As I said, I want to make it interactive as possible, so yeah, please don't be shy. Just give me a hoy and I'll come over and find him and throw questions to the panel. Because I do want to kick off this morning with a question. So it's regarding innovation. I know that innovation is a real buzzword. It's something that gets thrown around a lot quite liberally at the moment. Okay, a beard looking as good as Ian's.
I'll take that, thank you.
We're tackling all the big problems in this morning. That's a good one. If that's upvoted to the favourite, then I'll be impressed. Okay, so yeah, innovation's a real buzzword. It means different things to different people. So I just want to throw this to the panel, generally speaking, around what innovation means for you. So Ian, maybe do you want to sort of kick us off this morning?
Yeah, sure, thank you. Great to be here this morning. Nice to meet everybody.
Want to give him the microphone, please?
Should have
So we can
been-
hear him back in?
No, they're not. They're recording.
Cool. Okay, so innovation. Well, I would prefer to think of entrepreneurs as the people that sort of have really interesting ideas that try and do something a little bit different, take opportunities and run with them to see what happens. And I think oftentimes the word innovation perhaps gets used where the word entrepreneurship should be used. I think typically innovation is used in a corporate sense, and we all know that corporates aren't particularly fantastic at innovating. So I don't like the word because it's too broad, and I would prefer to look at entrepreneurs as kind of the, if you really want the innovators of the world. So I'm not sure I like the word at all, really.
You got it, Steve?
Yeah, I hate the word. So necessity is the mother of invention. We don't find something to do with invention typically. So innovation is a scurrilous word mostly used by university professors and researchers to get more money out of government. The only true innovation is actually spurred by a commercial threat. So if you're a corporation, you're currently in business and you think about innovating, think about how your competitors may be actually eating your lunch, taking your business, and how you're going to fight them. That's the appropriate way you will get to innovation. If you try and innovate for innovation's sake, you'll get it wrong. You actually need to you actually need to solve a problem. If that problem is customer and revenue loss, you solve that problem. As I just said, we call it innovation grass skirt dance. Corporates come in roots and ladders and say, we've been told we have to innovate. And so, it's like pulling strings on a puppet. What do we do next? What boxes do we need to tick? What boxes do we need to tick in order to actually innovate? So, I don't like the term. I don't like the term innovation. Maybe someone with a good innovative microphone.
In a way, innovation is the commercial application of creativity, perhaps. But absolutely echoing what Steve said, if there's not a strong driving demand for it, then it does become just simply a buzzword.
For us at Typify, innovation is actually pretty important. So I think we started off, as Steve said, it is about applying solutions to a problem. And we started off with an innovative idea. Our founder was an author himself, and he used to self-publish. He'd lay out his own books in layout software, and he wanted a way to do it faster. He wanted to automate the system and make it a lot easier for himself, and he could see a broader application for this. And so he hired a bunch of people to make this happen, and Typify launched the world's first fully automated desktop publishing software platform in 2004. Now, since then, innovation has become the bread and butter of our business. It is just something that we do as part of our day-to-day. We have to, because if we didn't adapt, we would die. If we were still a desktop publishing platform for print only, we would have sunk years and years ago. We've had to broaden and expand. We've gone global. And every year we're updating and evolving that software to solve the problems that our customers continue to have. And as the publishing ecosystem changes, we need to adapt to that. We need to find new solutions. We need to partner with different people to make our platform as useful as possible. And so in that way, innovation is just part of what we do.
Good morning, everybody. I knew I'd get asked this question, so I Googled it. What the hell is innovation? And 30 million responses came up. I was like, okay, obviously everybody has no clue what innovation really is. I actually don't spend very much time, to be honest, thinking about what is innovation. For us, it's survival, I guess, as Steve says. When you're in an environment that you've got competition, you've got to figure out how you evolve and stay ahead and stay relevant. And I guess innovation may be the description of the process that we use to do that. But yeah, we don't have a luxury of innovating for innovating's sake. It's just about being relevant and survival for us. Yeah.
Got it, perfect. I see that when we look at trending questions, Ian's beard is still running at number 1, so we might just give that a little bit more time. Ian doesn't strike me as the guy who wants to do a presentation on his beard at the moment. Cool, so we've heard some fairly good responses around what innovation means to each one of the panel members. I think from my personal experience in the business that I'm in, clients actually reach out to us and think that innovation is just needed to improve a workflow or to improve like an internal operational process. I just want to ask a question to the group around what does it mean, like in terms of like what sort of advice could you give to the group today around what it means to generate raving fans or to grow customers? I mean, what can we do from an innovation perspective to grow our customer base?
It depends what business you're in, and I think probably part of the answer we just heard as well is that, you know, some businesses are better, and it depends who your customers are, it depends on your route to market, because there's users and there's customers. A lot of people confuse the two, but customers pay you money and users use it. So bad customers use your service and don't pay you money. So I suppose the other one in my first business was SENet. We're a dial-up internet service provider. If you remember when you used to actually have to use a dial-up modem to access the internet, it rarely ever worked, and there was just full errors. It installed a lot of really shitty software. We had a massive tech support issue because, you know, it wasn't our fault. It was just the way it worked. It was broken, and when it didn't work, we were the reason. And a lot of our competitors didn't deal with that well. I suppose we owned the problems. So we have good old customer service with our innovation. So some innovations are actually quite small. So we empowered our workforce to fix our customers' problems for them on the phone, and if need be, you know, make them happy, sing them on, like them be, we don't care. So innovation, we did that using a whole bunch of tools to understand what was breaking where, fix the problems, understand if customers having repeated problems, because they could be not very good at using, you know, Netscape or Eudora or whatever the shitty programs at the time were called. So that sort of stuff was pretty important. I think our biggest innovation in that business was actually knowing what we sold our customers. But who hates ringing up an organisation and the person asks you, so what are we selling you again? Well, you don't actually know that. You know, so, you know, and so innovation can be small, and people do business poorly. There's some really simple innovations you can do to do it better. And I recommend, you know, owning your customers, owning your problems, and taking control of them.
Yeah, got it. We're not having a good run with these microphones at the moment. We might just reach out to the question that David's posted. So, what are the most common hurdles that we as entrepreneurs put in front of ourselves? And do we have some tips to knocking them down, those hurdles?
From what, there's lots of things, I suppose. I mean, most businesses fail because of people, so it's all our own fault. From my perspective, I don't think I procrastinate too much, and that's probably bad in business. You know, you should think things through. You can overthink, and then you can stalemate on that. So, from my own personal, I'm aware of my problem with procrastination. I fight with that a lot. So, I don't think that's helpful. That's my one thing to take out.
Well, I think in terms of putting hurdles in front of ourselves, I mean, I think I agree that a lot of people procrastinate, spend a lot of time agonising over decisions that perhaps sometimes they just need to go with one of the options and then see what happens and react to that. So I definitely agree with that. I think sort of more broadly, like, there's a lot of focus on sort of product or you know, refining the offering that you're trying to take to market, and a lot of people spend a lot of time making sure that is as perfect as it possibly can be. Whereas I would much prefer to see people sort of perhaps just have a go, you know, as early as possible, and use kind of decent feedback from people that are actually buying what you're trying to create, to improve that as you go. So I see a lot of people sort of waiting before they launch things and taking a lot of time over that, which is fine later on when you've got the luxury of doing so. But it's kind of life or death at the beginning. Then I think that's kind of important to think about.
For those of you who know me, I probably don't procrastinate enough. So you've heard the you know, jump out of the plane, build a parachute on the way down. That is my mode of business, and I've figured out a way of commercialising that, so that's pretty good. But the reality I find in that scenario is realise that you are in service of some need, and if you can leave your ego at the door, and you can make someone else look amazing, and you don't care if your logo's on it. It all sort of comes around eventually. I think that's probably my biggest tip in that regard, is that people sort of get too caught up on about, you know, their success story, realising that your success story is only linked to the success that you create for other people.
Yeah, like I wouldn't consider myself an entrepreneur, to be honest, but I've worked shoulder to shoulder with some of the most famous entrepreneurs in my industry. And I'd say that my observation, having been very close to some of these amazing entrepreneurs for so many years, is the ones that are the most successful are the ones that are able to harness the skills of others and recognise they don't have all the answers. It's that humbleness that they know what they don't know that I've found has been the most tremendous success. And definitely the people that I've worked with that have gone on to that elevated level of success, that is the common denominator amongst them all.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. I'm not an entrepreneur myself, but having worked with a few, I'd say that the ones that succeed are the ones that surround themselves with people with the skills, the strengths that they don't have that complement their own strengths. And the ones that fail are the ones that don't do that. That is pretty much it.
Yeah, and Chanel, while you've got the microphone, like when you think about like the life of an entrepreneur, there's those moments of doubt, right? In the panel's advice or in experience, when you keep pushing through, when do you know it's time to kind of pack it up and move on to the next, jumping out of a plane and building a parachute on the way down?
Yeah, well, certainly in the tech space, you know, R&D or research and development, it's the nature of it that some things are going to work and some things aren't. And the wisdom in Silicon Valley is persevere or pivot, which sounds a bit, buzzwordy. But, you know, in terms of actually persevering, you know, are you still learning something from this R&D project? Are you still creating things? Are you still solving problems, or are you flogging a dead horse? If you're flogging a dead horse, it's time to pivot and do something else. But that is just the nature of R&D. But in terms of personally, you know, as someone who suffers crippling self-doubt pretty much all the time, you just got to fake it till you make it a little bit and back yourself a bit. Just do things that scare you, and eventually they get easier.
Perfect, thanks. Elaine, I might throw the next question to you. Heads up, this one is from Tim.
It's not about a beard, is it?
It was on the screen, but I think it had something to do with how do you define culture in an
I
organisation?
knew I'd get the culture one. It's funny because when I was thinking about this innovation question, that's the thing I kept coming back to, is that you've actually got to have a culture that supports the process of innovation. So how do you describe culture? Culture is quite simply the way your organisation thinks and behaves and makes decisions, and you know, is driven into your culture. And obviously I've become quite well known for being able to build and create great cultures in companies. But I was thinking about how innovation plays out in that space, and it's actually interesting because I think culture can kill innovation faster than anything else. Now, if your people don't feel safe, if they don't feel safe to fail and to waste at the sacrifice of learning, then they will never innovate. And I've seen it. I've had a boss way back in my career who was an absolute horror story. He was an amazing entrepreneur, but he had no people skills. And I could just see how quickly, as he grew his company, that the culture that he created of being really fearful and afraid of making decisions on its own was actually crushing the ability for that company to grow. And it ended up closing down and being acquired actually by somebody else. And I put it all the way down to that he just couldn't build a culture of innovation and a culture of entrepreneurship. He could be it, but he couldn't translate that into anything else. So I think you have to, if you want innovation, make sure your people feel really safe to fail, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, good one. Any other panel members with their view on culture in the workplace?
So I think just a couple of reflections really. One is more of a personal one in terms of, and I won't say which business this was, but you know, kind of as you're growing a business and how the culture can change as you're doing so. So one particular business that I started from scratch, you know, sort of had sort of 5 or 6 team members and built an absolutely awesome culture where everybody felt like they could express themselves, they could be creative, we could challenge whatever we wanted to. And as we started to grow as an organisation, I started to bring people in with different skill sets, which absolutely were needed. And what that did, and I guess, you know, hands up, a couple of bad hires, etc., was completely change the mood in the office, the culture as a result. and therefore we started to stall. So I think there's a challenge for entrepreneurs once they get to a certain stage, is that, you know, if you think you've created a culture, it's something that needs to be nurtured. It's not something that you can just create and expect to live on no matter what, because we really suffered as a result of that. So I guess the first reflection would be that. The second is more around, so, you know, if you think about kind of, you know, the brand that I've worked for the last 5 years, you know, there is a very distinct culture in that place, and it's, you know, it's a pretty amazing thing to be a part of. But there are times where, you know, things can be taken too liberally by employees. So, for example, we introduced a unlimited leave policy, which, I mean, who knows what that really actually means, because they don't actually mean you can have the entire year off. So how much leave is you know, is acceptable, etc. And that sort of thing creates confusion, where you then have people that don't take enough leave when they perhaps ought to, and you have other people that take far too much and don't get their job done. And you know, I think when you sort of take the culture to the extremes in that way and try innovative things, sometimes they can backfire. So you know, I think it's something that affects big brands as much as it does perhaps small startups.
I can tell you what it's not. Google in California for a year, which, you know, everyone thinks, wow, it's the best country in the world. And, you know, when you get there, it's different. You get all the free bus rides, free food, you get fridges full of lollies or candy, and, you know, drinks and God knows what else. You can take your dog to work, and you can, you know, there's slippery slides, you can do gardening outside if you want. They bring, you know, George Clooney turns up twice a year and you go listen to him. That's not culture. That's actually just bribing people to hang around because their job's otherwise shit. And that was backed up by an internal survey where people were asked what they liked about working at Google. And all those things I mentioned were in the first 7 or 8, and the person's job was in number like 8 or 9, which is terrible. So ultimately, if you don't have people liking what they're doing, you've got a huge problem, and you can't just paper over that. So there's lots of, culture's tough, there's lots of things it's not, and it's not freebies.
Actually, I have a question for Ian. I can do that, right? So in the context of expanding culture in that business story you said, was there a point where you, like maybe you were embodying the culture and people could look to you as some kind of messianic, luxurious beard, whatever it is. But there was a point where that no longer scaled, because you were no longer then the icon point. And I guess it's curious to see how Branson's basically maintained that icon point despite, you know, you've run your business unit somewhat separately.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think the broader thing around that was you know, you start to bring in different skill sets. You know, at the beginning I looked for, you know, relatively entrepreneurial people that could move quickly, that had the right attitude, that would allow me to pull off the startup at the early stages. As you develop, you want a different set of skills, and sometimes that comes with a different set of personality. I'm not going to start naming careers, but, you know, you get it, like accountants and lawyers and all those sorts of things. And that does have an impact on how everybody interacts. And you know, I think there is potentially the case that there was a little bit sort of you know, myself and how far you can stretch yourself and so on, but you know, I think it was just more a question of when you bring in different skill sets, there is the potential to upset what's already happening, and you know, you have to be really aware of who you're bringing in, I guess, which doesn't sound particularly insightful, but it had a huge impact. You know, 3 or 4 people that, you know, didn't really fit what we were trying to do, and suddenly things changed completely in quite a negative way, even though the skills they possess were very necessary for us.
Perfect. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking that there's certain things you can, as you grow an organisation, it's interesting because the people you start with aren't always the ones you finish with. Believe me, I was in that situation. I left Pipe for that sort of reason in some respects. And they're difficult transitions, right? So as that company grows, you know, you got to realise that you might have been the you know, at the top or near the top, you know, in the early days, and then literally your skill set started to grow in the company. That's really tough, right? Not to get rest of that. So in that, it's not just, you know, founders and stuff, it's also employees. Like when you're growing, you can be very careful. Be very careful some things you give. Some things seem cheap. You've got a spare car spot, so you let someone use it. You've got a spare corner office, so you let someone use it. You give someone a title of, a CFO when they're really only probably a big grade company accountant. There's some things you can take off people that they will resign over. There's a car park, it's an office, and there's a title. In all seriousness, it's true. I have spare offices in the tenancy I own. I have spare offices I won't let people use because I know I can't take it off them. We put them in the common areas, and until I actually find someone who is of that grade, I don't want that culture issue. So there's some really sharp pieces to culture you be careful of as well.
Speaking about culture, Elaine, I might just direct this question to you. We hear time and time again from Sunny Coast businesses that finding good talent can be a problem and attracting good talent to the region. Can you share your thoughts on what you guys are doing to attract the right talent to Jets?
Look, first and foremost, my priority is getting the best possible people I can. That's my priority, not necessarily the responsibility of growing talent on the coast, I'll be honest. So my team is made up of at least half of them, just over half of them, is our international imports. And the reason I've had to do that is because I haven't got the availability of the talent, not just on the coast, but necessarily in Australia, within the industry that I'm in. So I've imported a lot of people. The most wonderful thing is that the Sunshine Coast is the biggest lure of all. And it's not hard to get them to move from some dismal place in the back end of South Africa to come to this beautiful Sunshine Coast. But the way that I view it is that it's contributing enormously to the coast, because these are incredibly smart, talented, experienced people who are going to be coming to the Sunshine Coast and leading teams. They've got teams of up to 8 people each who they're bringing through, they're upskilling, they're giving an experience that they just would not access had they just been on local availability of talent. So I guess that's the way that we do it. But with that said, any position we ever have, we always advertise locally as well. We'd love to have more local talent coming through. It's just, in my world, it's just not available. And I have to be ruthless and get it from wherever I possibly can. And it's mostly international. Yeah.
Can I ask something there?
That's interesting. You hear a lot, especially in the tech startup space. There's all the bullshit stuff, sort of led by Google and Facebook. You don't employ someone unless they're the best person in the world for that position. You wait for the best person. The reality is you've got to do the work. You've got to deliver the services. So do you ever have a conflict of you're not the best person ever? You're okay. Is there like a green band for an employee, a yellow band and a red band? So because that's true. If you've got positions to fill, right. Do you come across that conflict at all?
Near enough is not good enough, to be fair, for me. And most of the people that have come to work with me here have worked with me previously around the world, and they know how I work, and they understand the culture, and they understand what it takes to get things done. So I think, I can't always pull people across the world. So I've had to compromise, but I will do a lot to get that to happen, yeah.
And Elaine, while you've still got the microphone, before we jump into Jack's question, I think this could be quite pertinent to the group that's rocked up today, but when we think about Jets and largely a bricks and mortar empire, from a CEO's perspective, what are you doing to stay relevant in light of the health apps and e-programs that are now available in that space? Yeah,
it's a great question. In fact, Jets is now 10 years old, and I don't know who's got a business here that's more around 10 years old or more. Yeah, the biggest learning for us is not necessarily about the space that we operate in. Is the fact that our customer 10 years ago, who's a 20-something-year-old male mostly, is a very different animal today, 10 years later. And the most important thing for your business is about being relevant to your customer right now and being forever young. You cannot age your brand. And that's been the big learning for us, that we've had to stay relevant to the customer today, which is radically different. So our customer today doesn't expect things to just be in a bricks and mortar state. They expect things to be online, on an app. Innovation has to take place. The approach that we have is that we are not in the bricks and mortar game, we are in the membership database game. So your database is the most valuable asset that your business has. So just think about that. Now, whether our members choose to go to the actual space, so to go to the club space, or they choose to connect with us online, or to do that programming in a hotel in Perth, it doesn't matter. It's all about making sure that you've got a very good quality database, because that is what's going to be the value of your business going into the future. It will be for us.
Yeah, great response. Any other thoughts to that question before I move on to Jack's question? No, got it. I don't know who to direct this question to on the panel, but Jack has asked, it's received a few upvotes, says, how do you protect your idea when travelling to Asia? And in this scenario, it's specifically for manufacturing, but we might be able to talk more generally as well.
You can't. I've been to trade missions in China where everyone was asking intellectual property questions, and the guy got out there and said, get over it. If you come here, we will steal your intellectual property. I think Donald Trump's a disgusting human being, but what he's doing with respect to IP in Asia is so overdue. If you've got to qualify the word trade with the term free, you know it's not fair. So there has to be something sorted out with respect to intellectual property theft out of Asia. It is horrible, and it's so hard to enforce. However, what you can do to mitigate the chances is to get referrals from people who've done it before and go to reputable factories, reputable agents over there. So do your research. There's a fantastic organisation down in Brisbane called Evolve Manufacture Group. Ty Herman is the chap who runs that. They can onshore for about the same price to make plastic stuff, hula hoops and yo-yos as you can get out of Asia, right here in Brisbane. And they're governed by Australian IP law. So there are locals here who spend enormous amounts of money to automate their factories to do that, to compete with offshore manufacture. But for the most part, think really long and hard, get some references, and probably have a business plan for it to be stolen.
Steve, just quickly, I can see a few people taking notes. What was the name of that business in Brisbane again?
Evolve, as in Evolve Group. Guy's name's Ty T.Y. Hermans or Hermans? Hermans, he's a great bloke. Done an awesome business. They run a little fund even now. You can go there and pitch your mad inventor idea, and they might take a chunk of it and do the prototyping and put it for their channels. They're actually really quite good entrepreneurs.
Got it, Mike?
Yeah, upvote for Ty. He's really awesome.
Yeah.
If you are in a situation where you have an immediate need right now, though, and free trade is still a thing in China, the best way that we've always dealt with it when we've created electronics hardware is we've put a portion of it in the software. So wherever possible, if you can hide something in the software, especially if you're designing, if it's as easy, if you can. So I remember this. Okay, so I'm in Guangzhou at the lighting fair, and there's all of these amazing, lighting fixtures and stuff like that on this bench, and there's these people going up with their phones, and they're getting up this close and taking photographs of the circuit board. Meanwhile, there's a shoer who's simply, I'm assuming that's the technical term, who's just shooing off these people that keep coming up and taking photographs of their products. So if your product can be replicated by a photograph, it's already copied. If you can put a piece of that in software, and it doesn't always mean an app, sometimes it can be a very clever algorithm that solves a whole bunch of things that's embedded into the software. There's lots of creative ways that you can hide that and use it in software instead of hardware. And that seems to be the best way that we've been able to deal with that challenge so far, anyway.
Great, thanks, Mike. Shanna, I might get you to take over the microphone for a moment. Kerry's raised a question around, well, we all know how important social media has become in digital marketing, but what is your opinion on businesses solely built on these platforms? Do you have a view?
Businesses solely built on social media. I actually don't have much of a view on that, to be honest. I'm probably a bit old-fashioned in that regard. I've always worked in, well, not always, but more recently in a more business-to-business space. And for Typify especially, social media is just not a big deal for us. It's just not something that we can gain a lot of traction with, because our business really comes from talking to people one-on-one, going to trade shows, and having that face-to-face contact, building that trust with people. Publishing industry, it's not fun and funky and Instagrammable. It's our platform is a change. It's big and it's complex, and it will bring change into your organisation, and that needs to be managed. And you can't chunk that down into easily digestible social media bits and pieces. So yeah, I don't know. Actually, maybe Elaine's got something to say about that. You're more of a B2C type person, but you'd have social media happening, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like I don't know about businesses that are solely based on that, but yeah, I mean, social media obviously has a massive dominance in our industry. It's quite amazing. You see this generation, I guess it's the Gen Zs coming through, that everything is about capturing the perfect Instagram pic. So the other day, there was a teenager that I know who decided to get up at 4 a.m. and to go and capture the rising of the sun in the morning, solely for the idea of getting that pic on Instagram, and was not present in that moment. And it just really struck me at how dominant that's become in our life. And there are many of our members that all they do is they go in to capture the perfect Instagram pic of them working out. It's a necessary evil. I believe is here to stay. It's just another way of communicating, and it will eventually evolve into something else. But you better learn to love it, because right now that's exactly where all of our customers are, and it will always play a big part in the gym world, without a doubt.
Yeah, hashtag great comments.
Me too. In the paper on yesterday, Courier Mail, I think there was an article regarding the changing of the Facebook algorithm. Lucy Liu from Showpay was in there, cut our traffic in half. If you're only on those platforms, it's equivalent to only being in Westfield and you're at the mercy of the landlord. You've got to consider that in your business plan.
Yeah, great analogy. And Ian, you've worked with a stack of young entrepreneurs and startups. What's your view on this?
So what you see all the time is people that come in and say, I'm going to market this idea by going on social media, and that is just simply not enough. So this idea of putting a few posts up and hoping to sell a few things is not how it works. Where I think it can be really powerful is it's a way of communicating with your audience. In other words, you have to capture the audience first for it to be truly effective. So using everybody has a slightly different set of interests. People use different platforms. I disagree on the B2B thing in the sense that LinkedIn is an incredible way of talking to new people that perhaps you hadn't met before, and that's certainly sort of very effective in the right place. But people need to think of social media as the equivalent of a mailing list, as the equivalent of a diary full of contacts that you want to communicate with on a regular basis. So you have to get people onto those platforms first, and then anything that you post thereafter is something that is communicated with them. It's very unlikely that people find you if you just start posting without having that audience. So it's kind of making sure that you get as many people as possible onto these platforms, and then putting a message out. And again, thinking about, I get what you're saying about sort of publishing and all those sorts of things, but you can make a lot of things interesting and share an idea of what you're trying to achieve. There was an earlier question around culture and creating, was it raving fans? I think the phrase was. There are ways of making what you do interesting, and that social media can be a great way of portraying that. So if you approach it in the right way, it can be incredibly powerful.
Good one. Fine.
Just add something quickly. So your role is to collect stories, to create narratives, to have things that inspire people to come along that journey with you. If you've got a boring product, don't talk about its features because that's boring. So the idea of having social media is the equivalent of saying, I'm going into this crowded room now and I'm hoping that I'm going to tell you a story that's interesting. And that's ultimately how you need to look at it. So if you don't have an interesting story, then you're not going to get any great results out of social media, no matter how much you spend on AdWords. So focus on your stories, and that is also referring to the previous question about the raving fan side of things. We'll have something interesting to tell them. Keep curating and collecting those stories so you have something worth sharing.
Shannon, I'll direct the next question to yourself, just still on the marketing angle. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs around becoming an industry leader, like building your brand, positioning yourself in your industry as a thought leader?
Okay, well, actually, social media will help you with that often, but not always. So It completely depends on where you're at and what you're doing, and there are so many different approaches that you can take from a marketing perspective to position yourself as an industry leader. There are just so many activities that you can do. You could write a blog, you could be posting things on social media, but the most important thing is that you need to be getting out there and you need to be talking to people in the industry and to influential people in the industry where you are trying to position yourself as a leader. So I'll give you an example. At the moment, Typify is working on positioning itself as the go-to solutions provider worldwide for automated accessible publishing. Does anyone know what accessibility is in publishing? No, that's probably the case for most of us. We come at consuming content from quite a privileged perspective. We don't have a disability that impacts on our ability to consume that content. But however, there are a lot of people out there who may have visual impairments, they may have dyslexia, they may have a physical impairment that doesn't allow them to turn the pages of a book. And so we have to, well, it's becoming more and more, it's an ethical choice, but it's also a commercial and a legal choice in a lot of places, particularly for government organisations. They are now being legislated to have to provide their content in formats that are accessible to everybody. And it's quite challenging to do. If you're publishing content that is accessible or if it's not accessible and then you try to make it accessible, it's like if you bake a cake that was supposed to have nuts in it and then you go, oh, I forgot to put the nuts in, and then you try and poke them in afterwards. Yeah, the nuts will still be in there, but it's not going to be like it was supposed to be. And so you have to try and get to a point where your content is born accessible, and that is quite a challenging thing to do. And so Typify is very well placed to do this. We've been helping the World Health Organization publish their content in accessible formats, including the Global Report on Disability, since 2009. And so there's our first thing. We have credibility. So we have the World Health Organization, we have the International Telecommunications Union, we have Apple, we have a bunch of other high-level organisations, the International Organisation for Standardisation. They are all publishing their content in accessible formats using Typify and at minimal additional cost. And so we're establishing our credibility there. We're applying for awards in those areas. So last year, or actually this year it was, we applied for the London Book Fair International Excellence Awards for an initiative in disability, in accessible publishing, and we were finalists for that award. So once again, that's building credibility for us. We are also getting out there into accessible publishing arenas, and we run webinars, we'll be doing a talk at the Frankfurt Book Fair this year on accessible publishing and why it's important, why you should do it and how you can get there. So it's about getting in front of people who who need that service, but giving yourself the credibility to back that up. The other thing that we'll be doing to establish ourselves as a leader in this field is in October we'll be launching a new project where we will be providing our services free to a company in the world somewhere that is producing content in accessible formats for people with disabilities. And we'll be doing that in partnership with the World Intellectual Property Organisation and the Accessible Books Consortium. And so once again, that gives us that credibility that, they're working with us, we are the go-to solutions provider. So it's really about making yourself credible and getting yourself in front of those people wherever they are.
Yeah, it's what I'm hearing is to Mike's point, Steve's point, not putting all your eggs into one basket, but creating or curating relevant content, keeping it front and centre. Yeah. Ian?
So, just sort of adding to that really, talking about thought leadership, it's a fantastic way of a startup getting themselves noticed. So thinking about, as part of a good marketing plan for a startup, I always like to see something on thought leadership where it's appropriate. So what do I mean by that? Becoming a thought leader is participating in a conversation, right? And it's identifying that the conversation is happening out there in some way, shape or form. Who the people are that are kind of the key protagonists in that conversation, and then adding value to that conversation. So thinking about, we've done a piece of research and this builds on the narrative that's already been created by these professors or these journalists, etc. And then you go out and you approach the journalists and you say, listen, I can see that you've been talking about this. I've done a little bit of research around this area, see what you think if that builds on the narrative that you've been sowing. that's how you get coverage in the press as a startup, rather than just throwing press releases out everywhere. But it does build your credibility as a thought leader, it builds your relationship with journalists, and it gives you the opportunity to be featured more. And as a byproduct of that, you're going to get sort of links to your website, you're going to get recommendations where appropriate, and you can start sending people like that product after a while. So I prefer, thinking about thought leadership from a startup perspective, it's how you get noticed, it's by adding value to a conversation. And that can be really powerful when it's used right.
I think that's a great tip, Ian. I mean, just even the tip around like reaching out to the journo who's written the article is a great way to get a response. Yeah.
Be careful though, because the mob will call you out if you bullshit that, right? And you see a lot of that, especially in the tech startup space. You see such and such person, serial entrepreneur, this, that, and literally it's just a cavalcade of half-truths at best, if you know what I mean. So, I get that people have to promote their own interests, I'm okay with that, but there's a point you can put yourself up, there's a point you lie, right? And I've seen some people string lies about, especially their career, about how they're some genius and they've never been in business. Yes, I agree with all that, but just it can go too far. In my space, I often see it go too far.
So before putting yourself out there as a thought leader, just make sure you know your product back to front, know the industry back to front, know what you're talking
make sure you actually are a thought leader.
So,
Can I say something
where are we
further
at
on
with
that?
questions?
I actually agree with that a lot. Just do not bullshit. You need to be authentic. And so I know you've got a question on your sheet, Cam. It's about what advice we'd give to businesses to help their impact. And my advice to that is be authentic. You need to understand where marketing fits within your organisation. And if you think that marketing is a box on an organisational chart, that's the person who sits there and does our website and our newsletter. Yeah, that's part of it, but no, actually marketing surrounds your organisation. It is part of everything you do. Every engagement that you have with a customer, whether that be yourself, one of your employees, or an engagement with your marketing materials, your website or your newsletter, or your social media, if they're engaging with your product, if they're engaging with your service, that is a marketing engagement. And if there is a disconnect between the messages that you are putting out there and the experience that the customer has when they actually engage with your company, then you are just going to go down the tubes. It doesn't work. And so my advice around that is, if you've got nothing to say, then don't get out there and try and write a blog. There is absolutely no point in flogging yourself to death trying to write a blog every week if you've got nothing to say. Just don't do it. Focus on what your strengths are and be genuine and get that out there and make sure that everyone in your organisation is aware of what you're trying to achieve with that marketing effort, and that, when people are engaging with you, that they get that genuine experience right the way through. They're copying that from everybody, not just from, the marketing materials they're putting out there or the thought leadership that's going out there.
Thank you, Jenna. Okay, so when we look at the upvotes at the moment, one of the highest rated questions are what are the key differences, strengths you've seen between male and female entrepreneurs? We'll probably talk to this for a while, but something the crowd wants to know. So what sort of, even if we try and bullet point form the answer to this question?
So I've got a lot of flack over some things I've said in the last sort of 6 or 8 months, and that put them on TV was wasn't helpful. I invest in entrepreneurs, I invest in people, I invest in people I know I think are going to be fun to work with, who are going to take something forward and are going to make themselves wealthy and also, and will also make wealth for myself. And actually probably the best entrepreneur I've got, the most active, commercially vicious person I've got is a lady called Jen. I trust her name, it's terrible. Jen from Throatscope, Jen from Throatscope, Jen Holland. Unfortunately her product isn't that good, but she refuses to believe that, but she's promoting this thing, she may win, I don't know, but I don't think so. But if I give her any other company, she'd own the world, right? But for the most part, she's an outlier. Most of those other people in my portfolio are men, to be quite honest, because they are more aggressive, assertive, they don't take no. And so what I look for are those traits. Assertive, commercially aggressive, don't take no, don't give in. And typically, they are found more often in men. That's just a fact. I'm sorry if it's wrong. I also prefer young people to old people. We're going to have fight as well if you want. Because they win more often. I follow the people who win more often. and we follow traits. Typically, they're younger people who are more sort of aggressive, commercially savvy, and don't take no for an answer. And you just find those more in the population of men rather than women. Young men rather than old anybody.
Yeah, Elaine.
Yeah, look, I spent my whole career working very closely with some very successful all male entrepreneurs. I've never had the opportunity to work for a female entrepreneur, and perhaps that will change in the future, and it's just not in my career span. So, look, the differences that I've noticed, and probably the best way to describe this is that I don't feel myself male, female. I've been brought up by the scruff of my neck by male entrepreneurs, so I'm probably quite male in a lot of the ways that I handle myself in business, and that probably helps. But somebody said to me one day that, if there's a job advertised in the paper, and that shows my age, doesn't it? On on Seek, and there's 10 attributes that job requires. A woman will read it and say, I've only got 7 out of 10, I'm not going to apply, and the guy goes, I've got 3 out of those 10, I'm perfect for the role. And I think that's the best way. I think it's just sometimes women are so much harder on themselves and think they have to be so much more perfect. Trust me, I have seen some disastrous leadership and bad ideas come out of some of the best entrepreneurs I've worked for that are gobsmacking and breathtaking. But as I say, the thing that I've been obviously exposed to has helped me in my own career realise that 3 out of 10 is actually good enough most of the time, I promise you.
Yeah, good response. Okay, just sticking with the theme with the crowd, I think about my own business, and when I was employed, I always had the privilege of having someone above me to bounce ideas off, to get advice, to get guidance. It was only when I jumped into my own business I thought, how good is this? I don't have someone breathing down the back of my neck. But what I've kind of missed in my own business is someone to reach out to get advice from, a mentor. Adrian's asked the question, who is in your top 5 people that you get advice and mentorship from?
So to start with my first business, I had an amazing accountant, a guy called Kevin Burrows. He was just, the last piece of advice he gave me was to find a new accountant because my business was too big for him. That's when you know you've got a good mentor. The second accountant I got was from and I was still very good mates with him, John Hood. He was a fantastic man, really sort of helped grow my commercial savvy and understanding. I paid both of those people because that was a standard commercial relationship, but there was a lot more to it than that. I think we need to understand what mentorship is, right? A lot of people sort of look at it as formal or like a weird relationship. It's somebody you get along with, you can catch up with a coffee and say, this is what's going on. I'm going for this, and they'll probably at sometimes do the same thing. So it's this two-way trade of ideas, feelings, situations, whatever it might be, that you can swap stories on. And you might not be able to help them, but you maybe tell them. That's why I speak a lot of analogues of what's happened in the past. I don't know your situation. I'm not in the cotton trading business, but I had something similar in the IT trading business. And so you can help out that way. So yes, you need them. I've been fortunate that I learned most from, because I had an accounting deficiency when I first started the business because I was more technical, and so I learned the most. That to me was the largest amount of gains that I made. You've got to find someone that you've got to find a friend. Doesn't mean you're going to have barbecues together. You've got to be friends, that's for sure.
Steve, just on that, just to drill down a bit further, in your experience, do you look to receive like a mentor or a trusted advisor with someone who's perhaps not your lowest skill set? So let's say like if finances are not your strongest skill set, do you look to sort of align to someone with that strength, or it really doesn't come into the mix at all?
No, I think it's because I've got the most recollection of that because I made the most personal, I made the most intellectual gains in my personal portfolio in that respect. So I had the lowest understanding of that, and so therefore I needed to talk to those people because I knew there was a weak there. Didn't go seeking it. That's sort of how it landed. I supposedly mentor 2 fabulous young entrepreneurs. They're all men, but anyway, just very well. And they think I mentor them, they mentor me. One guy, lovely young fellow, Jonathan, who runs Boston in Brisbane, does Wi-Fi and all sorts of stuff, and he's just amazing. I just sit back, and the other guy, Andy Barnes and Chris Ireland from Go One, I just sit there and I come back and I swear I've led 100 IQ points to him. They're just smart like a mandama. So it's amazing where people perceive the value in that relationship, to be honest. So so when I talk about people networking, I talk about in terms of the how often you have to network. And so there's how many people? 850-ish, 100, 150?
Probably about 85.
Call it 100. So if you spoke to everyone in this room today, you'll probably get a $10,000 sale, or you'll probably save $10,000 in your business somewhere from one person. That's statistically what actually happens, right? This is all about networking, the value of networking, right? And the same thing comes from a mentoring relationship. So you've got to get out there and you've got to find lots of people, you've got to exchange those ideas. You have to understand the background of the person you're talking to, because you will get value from every conversation, providing you understand their journey. You can build a filter that's relevant for you. So that's exceptionally important. It'll help get rid of those people who are just telling a bullshit story as well. So mentoring is very important. Seek out all different sorts of opinions. You've got to give up. It's a fair trade. You've got to give to get when it comes to that sort of stuff. And if you find a mentor who wasn't paid, ditch them. They're not a mentor. They're a pain in the ass. So yeah.
Ian, I'm keen to hear your view on this, working with a lot of high growth startups as well.
I mean, it's interesting because there's a lot of talk about mentor. I think the person who I've always found the most useful to talk to is a guy I used to work with, and that was because we put the two of us in a room and we could solve a problem together. And what I most appreciated was, no matter what the problem was, we just sat down for however long it took just to talk through what our options were and which way we'd like to go. That we'd always be able to benefit from each other's expertise, and you kind of bring out the best in each other. So I agree on the kind of weird relationships, and it's nothing necessarily like that. It's just someone you get along with that you can, that brings out the best in you. You bring out the best in them, or that always worked for me. So every time I do something new, he's the person I wanted to sort of do it with.
And whilst you've got the microphone, Ian, so it's likely that everyone on the panel has been privy to a lot of pitches. What do you wish startups would change about what they pitch and how they pitch, and what is it that you're specifically looking for?
I think what I'd like to see more of in pitches is people kind of selling the story a little bit better. So we can talk, there's lots of different things that you would want in a pitch. First of all, it depends on what you're pitching for. How you pitch to get invested is very different to perhaps how you pitch to win a competition or something like that. But I think the key thing for me is I'd like to see more sort of, not, I'm going to be $1 billion company in X number of years, but more of a story that's got a beginning and a middle and an end. People always miss out at least one of the last two parts to that. And it kind of helps you to sell a vision, not just in terms of why this thing exists in the first place. It's not just the problem you're solving, but the way in which you're going to do it as well. So we go back to the question around culture before. I'd just like to get a stronger sense from people of how they're going to go about doing what they're doing, more in terms of depth around their approach and a genuine understanding of kind of the mechanics of the way their startups work and those sorts of things. So I like a good story, and if you can get that across in a pitch, I think that's the one.
And Steve, yeah.
Yeah, look, so when you're in a situation where you see a lot of pitches, you've got to stand out. Because a lot of times, you'll probably find someone's got their phone on their desk and they're checking their mail. So you've got to sort of give them that sort of slap in the face to start the conversation. And one of the best ways I've seen that done is a lady in Brisbane called Wendy Oxenford, business called The Vito, which is a separated couples communications app. And her pitch deck starts with, "Fuck you." So that's the guaranteed 2 words that's going to derail a divorced couple's conversation. That gets your attention, and everyone wakes up. So, you've got to get their attention, and you've got to outline the problem. So there's 10 dynamics. So if it's an investment pitch, we're going to invest in you for 10 years. If you think your business is going less than 10 years, you're in the wrong game, right? This is a 10-year journey. So we've got to like you, we've got to understand you, we've got to want to do business with you. So whatever that takes to get that across the line. We then have to understand you're chasing a problem that's big enough and rich enough people will want to pay to have solved. That's the reality. Then if you've got the right team, the right problem space, the right headspace, then your idea doesn't matter that much, because it'll be the third or fourth idea you do anyway that solves it. So a good team won't work on a shit problem for very long. Won't work on a shit idea, for very long. So, and so there's a lot to get across. Ultimately though, if you're talking investment, the investor wants a return. They don't want to have all these flowery things about want to do this for the community and that for the Sunshine Coast, or if it might be, right, but they actually want a return for their money. So ultimately at some point, you're going to have to deliver that, not in such terms as numbers, but you have to sort of let them know directly with your story how you're going to get to some place that's going to be a lot bigger in the future.
And just before we move on, Steve, I was actually at one of your events a couple of years ago at River City Labs, where there was a lovely lady there that spoke about the difference between how Americans pitch their startups and how Australians pitch their startups. Australians are very like, oh, things are going okay, look, it's that tall poppy syndromes, whereas, the Americans come out and go, we're absolutely crushing it, we've got so much demand. Do you look for that confidence and that enthusiasm, or can you just kind of see through that facade?
You never buy into a business because there's a lack of confidence in the people pitching it. And if there's lack of confidence, you're going, oh, these guys don't like it, why should I? So you need confidence. It comes down to how overstated that confidence is. The biggest thing we look for, and the biggest thing we love to get, everyone likes investing in profit, right? Yeah, but the profitable businesses are hard to find and they're too expensive to invest in. Right? And so we talk about traction. What sort of traction does your business have in the market? Profit's awesome. The next best one is revenue, for example. So if you can prove that you can do something where you just have straight usage. You might have a business like Facebook, can have revenue for years, they can give a shit through like a weed. So you have to demonstrate some form of traction and some form of what it costs to grow that business. So in that respect there, the thing to demonstrate to a smart investor, or most investors, is traction. How can you actually go from here? I know how I got from here to here, and I did it by spending $10,000 and I got $100,000 there. Therefore, I need to spend more money to get up to there. If you can demonstrate that, it takes away 80% of the investor's questions. Because if he has to ask, will this work, you're in trouble.
I want to add something on the pitch one. Please don't just put in buzzwords.
Blockchain.
Yeah, we don't need a blockchain, cloud, AI. We actually don't have AI yet, just the FYI, we don't have AI. It's machine learning. But my thought to that is, if you have to bolster your pitch deck simply with buzzwords because you haven't got a compelling enough story or because you haven't got any traction, you're probably not ready to pitch.
Yeah, good. And Mike, if we can just stick with you for a moment as well. So thinking about like startup pitch events and things like that, Ref has raised the question around what are the best startup events you know of and why?
Depends where you're at. So if you're very, very new to it and you want to play your part on the startup theatre stage, then there's Startup Weekend, which is a good educational experience. I actually don't really, can we have some clarity on that question? Who asked that question? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just interested to understand from a panel if they picked one startup event that they had been to or knew of.
As an investor, pitch event?
Just that you'd seen as being an interesting event, and I just wanted to understand what was one thing of that event that may have helped you form that decision. And if you don't have one, that's fine.
Well, look, on my personal bend is I absolutely love hackathons. I find them so much fun. I don't hire anybody unless they've hacked with me, because until you can see the whites of somebody's eyes at 11 o'clock on Saturday night, where it's just impossible to deliver the thing on Sunday, you really don't know what they're like. Startup Weekend is obviously a model of that, but there are actual professional hackathons that you can do. We've run 17 over the last year, where you actually have a pro hack on a specific industry vertical. And I know it's not necessarily a startup event, but it is something where you are tackling an innovation, and you've got a fixed period of time, you've got a fixed cost, and it's just about how you can roll that out. But maybe somebody else will have something to add to the startup experience.
There's lots. There's everything from, one of the more valuable ones I've done was a 1 hour lunch and learn with an amazing CEO who just gave his journey. So learn a lot from that, to be honest. 3 day, Friday night through to Sunday night hackathons, they're a bit of fun. But the first Startup Weekend I always remember, because that was just the energy in the room at Startup Weekend is just staggering. And it turns out I was judging, so I couldn't actually participate, so it was a bit of a shame. But no, we can probably start weekends the most energy.
And I was just going to say, Ref, a bit of a plug here, you can go to sunshinecoastinnovation.com.au. Did I get that URL right? Yeah, cool. We're actually going to do a bit of a plug at the end as well, if anyone's got any events coming up. Okie dokie, who have we heard?